just popped up on mine, says webinar is now streaming live on YouTube, so.
Cool.
Should give us a link.
9 and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right. This one is what I take. Here we go.
It popped up on mine, says webinar is now
It
streaming
did?
live on
Okay.
the YouTube video. Or cool.
Okay. What do I do?
And quickly. And then whenever we're ready to start the meeting.
Okay. Ready for you to call the meeting to order?
Good.
Yeah?
I can start it.
What do we need to
We let
broadcast? Oh, we have
people
to
in.
broadcast it though.
Okay, well, welcome to the April 14th, 2020 Planning Commission virtual meeting. If we can have roll call, Shannon, please.
Messina,
Here,
Fleming. Fleming. Ingalls. Fleming.
Oh, I think we have some mutes on potentially.
a little
They're not muted.
Oh, John, okay, John was, yeah.
Messina,
here,
Fleming. Ingalls,
Here.
Lutrip,
Here.
Mandel,
Here?
Rumpler,
Here.
Ford.
Here.
So Chairman, before we get started, I believe we might have a few commissioners that need to connect to their audio. This is our first Zoom meeting. We might have a few technical difficulties, audience members, so bear with us. Looks like Commissioner Fleming didn't show audio yet. Let me get her. Oh, she needs to. Commissioner Fleming, can you hear us? Do you have audio connected?
Because they don't move through us until they connect their audio.
I'll,
System.
Yeah, I can send you a little chat then.
Oh, I can
Okay.
do that if you need.
Yeah, if you could do that, that'd be helpful, so we can make sure, do it appropriately, okay?
Lynn, can you hear us yet? And is Mike going to be on too?
Mike is there.
Mike is here.
The answer.
Lynn just joined as a panelist, so I made them she's maybe an attendee, another panelist, so they should be able to.
Okay. We have, showing us all of our attendees on here. She's still not connected audio. Okay. Well, you want to get started and then maybe we can try and get her to connect through?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
At this point, we'll go into approval of minutes from the March 10th meeting.
Mr. Chair, move approval.
I have a motion to have a second on that.
I will second that.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to have Hillary kind of take over the meeting and explain how it'll be run, and then Shannon later on will be swearing in applicants and anyone that has signed up for that particular hearing. That will start, and we do have 3 public hearings tonight. So 4 public hearings, I'm sorry. So Hillary, if you can explain how our first virtual meeting
Okay, well, good. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, everybody. So this is our first Zoom virtual planning commission meeting. So hopefully everything goes smoothly other than some expected audio and other technical challenges. So you can see the slide on the screen here. Hopefully everybody has access to this. So if you have not already signed up and you are either an applicant or a representative of the applicant or a community member, we'd like for you to sign up to speak during any of the 4 public hearing items. And so you can go to the link on the screen here and sign up for that. That would be great. So during each of those items, after the staff completes their presentation, then there will be a mass swearing in of whoever will be speaking during that item, so the applicant and the public. So everyone will do, there's a little virtual hand in Zoom. And so you'll need to, if you can, find the hand and raise the hand to swear in, and then that'll help us make sure everyone has sworn to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So we will do that. And then we'll be going through this like we do normal meetings. So the applicant will go first, then the public, and then the applicant will have a chance to do the rebuttal. And the commission will go through the normal findings. So this sheet on the screen has some of the troubleshooting for you in case you do have some issues. And then if you're not speaking, if you can mute your audio source, that'll help to reduce any of the background noises. So with that,
Great.
we have completed the staff
Okay.
comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to start with the first public hearing, and the applicant is Drew Bittman of Lake City Engineering on behalf of the Zanetti Brothers. The address is 4303 North Crown Avenue. A proposed zone change from C17L 17. This is the ZC-1-20, and Mike is going to be doing the overview presentation for the city on this.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. This is Mike Behere. I'm the city planner for Coeur d'Alene. This is public item number ZZ-1-20. Applicant is Zanetti Brothers, represented by Lake City Engineering, for a zone change from C17L to C17. Property is located at 4301 North Crown Avenue, and legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on March 28th, 2020. And all of the required notifications have been made. Here's the location map showing where the property is located. You can see it's highlighted here in red. This is US 95. This is Crown Avenue. This is Kathleen. And this is a close-up aerial photograph of the property. As you can see, the property is vacant to the north, and it was used for RV sales. To the south is an auto dealership. This is the location where the existing auto dealership is. This is the vacant property. It was used for RVs, and now it's completely vacant. This is Crown Avenue located here. There's another bird's eye view of the property. Here's the applicant's exhibit showing the proposed the C17L and the proposed area to be rezoned. There are 4 findings that must be met in order for a zone change to be approved. Finding B8 through B11. We'll go through each and every one of these, starting with B8, that this proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan indicates this in US 95 corridor, and it's in the area of transition, and it's expected to change, the neighborhood's expected to change over the planning period. Comprehensive plan objectives as it relates to this zone change request, I have labeled 3 located on this side. The full list is on page 8 of your staff report. Objective 1.12, community design, support the enhancement of existing urbanized areas and discourage sprawl. Objective 1.14, efficiency, promote the efficient use of existing infrastructure, thereby reducing impacts to undeveloped areas. And objective 2.01, business image diversity, welcome and support a diverse mix of quality professional trade businesses and service industries while protecting existing uses from these types from encroachment by incompatible land uses. The next finding is finding B89, that the public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate for the proposed use. This application has been routed through the city staff, and each department has indicated that there are adequate public facilities and public utilities available to serve the proposed request. This is continued for that, and the streets department's city engineer has indicated that the subject property is bordered by US 95 to the west and Crown Avenue to the east. Crown Avenue must be improved to city standards along the entire frontage, including sidewalk, swales, curb, and gutter, with any construction on the property. The streets department does not have any objection to the proposed zone change. Finding B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. The physical characteristic of the site is relatively flat and elevation drops towards the northwest part of the property. And there are no topographical or physical constraints that would make the subject property unsuitable to change the zoning from C17L to C17. Here's the topographic map indicating, showing where how the topography is laid out on this property. See, it's a little higher here and it slowly slopes this way. Here's some site photos on the northeast corner looking west. Here's one on the northwest corner looking south. Here's mid on the west border looking south. Here's a photo of the existing facility on the southern portion of the property. And here's one on the southeast corner looking northwest through the vacant part of the property. The next finding and last finding is finding B11, that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and or existing land uses. The city engineer has indicated that nearby Kathleen Avenue and Government Way have the availability capacity to accommodate additional traffic generated from the subject site, but access in and out of Crown Avenue could be slightly more congested during peak hours and could be challenging for left turns. However, the city and streets department has no objection to the zone change as proposed. Full staff comments are on page 12 of the staff report. Here's the zoning map indicating the zoning and the surrounding zoning. You see to the north is C17, to the west is C17, and to the east is R12, and the south C17. The proposed C17 district is intended as a broad spectrum commercial district that permits limited service at 17 units per gross area. This district should be located adjacent to arterials. However, joint access developments are encouraged. There's a list of few of the principal uses that are permitted in the C17 zoning district. As you can see, there's automobile sales as a permitted use. In C17L, automobile sales would be a special use permit. Here's some zone changes that happened in the past. In 1984, there was a zone change from R12 to C17L. And then in 98, same R12 to C17L. And then on the west in 2017, there was a zone change from light manufacturing to commercial. All those were approved. There's a land use map indicating the land uses. To the north, C17, to the south, commercial operation, and to the east, we got single family and duplex housing. The decision point tonight before you is to make a recommendation to City Council regarding the proposed zone change from C17L to C17 on approximately 6.2 acres. Planning Commission will need to consider this request to make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mike. And before I ask any of the commissioners if they have any questions of Mike, and John, we saw your hand raised. I just want to make sure Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Fleming can hear us.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Okay. Yes.
Commissioner Ward, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
All right, Shannon, can you just add them to the roll call? Because before they
Right.
wanted to.
Fleming?
Here.
Mike, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Are you
Which
here?
Mike?
Okay, Mike
Oh.
Ward.
Okay,
Mike
sorry.
Ward? Yeah, no, that's quite all right. I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I
Okay.
can.
So we have all the commissioners, roll call done, and now we'll go back to asking Mike if he has any questions, and John, we can start with you, or you raise your hand.
Thank you. And Mike, good report as usual. Appreciate that. Couple questions for you. And I guess while I'm asking, maybe Drew Dittman can kind of be thinking of as well, and maybe he can answer this. But, before this meeting, you have pre-application meetings with the applicant, I presume, right?
We did have a project review for this applicant.
So a question is kind of, if the goal here is to be able to have some sort of auto dealership on that property, why is it that they want to do a zone change rather than a special use permit?
Let's say in the future, they want to do an expansion or something else changes, they would have to come back to Planning Commission for another look at it for a review.
Because the benefit of a special use permit in this instance is it ties it to a specific commercial use as opposed to just full and open C-17. And when I look at page 12 of the staff report for finding B11 with respect to traffic, the traffic analysis talks about a comparison, say, with Blue Dog RV or something like that. We don't, in this case, if we recommend to approve this, we're opening the door for any C-17 use there, correct?
That is correct. All uses allowed in the C-17 would be permitted uses.
So 2 years down the road, RVs aren't selling very well in this economy, and all of a sudden we put any kind of C-17 use on that site. As you well know, we could have a juvenile offender facility, we could have a rehab facility, we could have a gasoline store, we could have commercial kennels, some less desirable things that open the door for anything. And so when I'm trying to decipher in my mind whether the compatible use to residential to the east is there or not with respect to traffic and just the compatibility in general, I just wonder why we're taking the leap to C-17 rather than just come in with a special use permit that kind of puts some boundaries on it.
I'll let the applicant speak to their reasoning behind the application.
Right on. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Thank you, John. Any other commissioners have any questions?
You used to have a button here we could raise our hand to speak. Do we still have that? It's just not my screen.
I think it's under participants.
It's
It's
either
under participant.
It's in the more button. Those three little dots.
Participants, okay.
Oh, no, it is.
No, in the participants
Participants,
section,
sorry.
it will
It is
give you.
participants.
Well, I have my question, what is the surrounding property? Is that all C-17?
To the north is C-17, to the south is C-17, to the west is C-17.
So the only part that isn't C-17 is the residential on the other side of Crown Avenue.
That is correct.
Okay, so let me indulge myself. So I got my same up here. If I want to raise my hand, that's what I do. Now is my hand raised?
You just did it, Peter. Thank you. Yep.
Okay. I'll try not to interrupt, but I don't know if I can work the hand.
No problem. We're all learning from this first time around, so feel free to ask questions. Okay, any other commissioners have questions of Mike at this point?
I had the same question as Commissioner Ingalls, but thank you for clarifying, Mike.
You're welcome.
And also, if you do have a question, we'll see the hand, but and I'll try and call your name out if I see your hand. But if for some reason you don't raise your hand, if you can just say your commissioner's name, that would be helpful when we know who's talking. That'd be great. But so far, so good. Okay, if there's no other further questions from the commissioners, we'll have the applicant come up.
And we'll do the swearing in.
Yeah.
Chairman, so
We're gonna have Drew come up, or you can sit down still, Drew, I'm sorry. Doing this when we have people come up to the podium. At this time, we are gonna have Shannon swear in the applicant and any other people who have signed up. And Hillary has, I guess, a sign-up sheet, and so I'm not sure.
For this item, we just have the applicant and signed up.
Okay, so, Shannon, go right ahead.
Drew, raise your hand, please. Okay, do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So you go ahead and I'm sure you'll address some of the questions you might have heard. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. I was having some technical difficulties on my end. I lost Mike about halfway through the presentation and just got back on. So I'll do my best here. I heard some of the comments from some of the planning commissioners. Again, Drew Dittman, Lake City Engineering for the record, representing the Zanetti Brothers and Coeur d'Alene Nissan tonight for the zone change. We've got 6 acres there, as Mike had explained, on Crown Avenue, just off of Highway 95, north of Super One there, that we're asking for C17 from C17L. It is a little bit of a housekeeping issue in our minds, as the underlying use has been auto sales and has been RV sales for honestly as long as I can remember. There's been some kind of auto dealership or RV dealership at that location. It has recently switched hands to the Coeur d'Alene Nissan group, and they have opened up a small operation in that existing building and are looking to expand it into the property to the north. That's the reason for the zone change. As you guys are aware, the auto dealerships are not an outright allowed use in the C17L, but they are in the C17 district. And instead of having to come every few years and get a special use permit or re-up a special use permit, we figured it made sense to request the rezone to C17L. That matches the surrounding properties to the north and the south and to the west. Obviously, there's that pocket of R12 residential to the east. We are aware, and I think Commissioner Ingalls had addressed a little bit about traffic and C17 allowing a multitude of uses. Those issues are typically addressed at site plan review. And as Mike had indicated, we've gone through project review on this. And as I said, we're looking to do a little bit of expansion. And so any traffic related issues that come up, we obviously will have to address at that time. But the C17 zoning seems to make the process a little bit easier for us. So again, I think it's a fairly straightforward request. Mike went through the required findings, and there's a comp plan analysis in the staff report. And so I guess I'll stand for questions.
Okay, do we have any questions from the commissioners to Drew? John, I see you raised your hand. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to come back at it again, Drew. Can you hear me?
I can, John.
So I guess what I'm saying is if the goal is to, I guess, legitimize the auto dealership that's there and enable the auto dealership to expand in the future to the north, and for that to be auto sales, why not a special use permit that gives me a warm and fuzzy that, I'm okay with it being an auto dealership, but but I'm not sure I'm okay with that site becoming a juvenile detention facility or a gas station or, a commercial kennel or some kind of a boarding house or any number of other not so desirable things next to residential that could happen in the future 5 years from now when cars aren't selling so good. Why not just come in with a special use permit for the property to the north?
Sure, good question. And there's a couple of reasons for it. The first, I think, is a matter of special use permit has a limited time frame on it, a limited shelf life on it. And then we would have to come in every, I think it's 5 years in Coeur d'Alene for the life of it.
I don't think that's the case. I disagree.
Could maybe Hillary or Mike clarify that? What's the shelf life on a special use permit?
Well, if you get it started and you get going and you go to your site plan, you don't have any changes, then you're fine. But if you want to do some changes or anything like that, you may have to come back to the planning commission, depending on what type of changes there are.
So, for example, Mike, if we were to expand the uses in the future and add to the building, that would be a change that we'd have to come back and redo the special use permit for?
Possibly, depending on the volume of the size of the change.
So to answer your question there, Commissioner Ingalls, that would be one reason is that every time they would look to put it in our court, every time we look to expand or to change what we're trying to do or to grow, we'd have to come back go through the whole process again. I understand it allows the city to do it, but correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, if that property were to change use, don't they have to go through a change of use application with the city? And the commission will get a chance to review it at that time?
That is correct. Well, not a change of use. If it's a permitted use, they'll have to go through a project review.
Which would allow the city to have a chance to look at such things as traffic and other things like that?
That is correct, at that project review time, yeah.
Okay, do any other commissioners have any questions?
Mike, was there any property owners were notified about this, correct?
That's correct. We
And did anybody respond?
I'm unaware.
Currently, property owners are surrounded by C-17 except for this one area here.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions of the applicant from the commissioners? Okay, if there are no more questions, Drew, I thank you. And since you're the only one that signed up, unless you have something else to add, I'm going to close public.
Nope, I think I'm good.
Sorry, who was that?
That was me, Drew. I think I'm good.
Okay, great. All right, I appreciate it. So I'm going to close public testimony at this time and bring to the commissioners to have a discussion on the item and or a motion after any discussion. Two participants raised hands. I hear, hold on, we have two participants that raised hands.
John Ingalls and Lynn.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Okay, so John and Lynn.
Oh, John and Lynn. All right, Lynn, go ahead and see you raise your hand.
I'm unmuted now. I tend to agree with John. It is wide open if we approve this as a C-17, and time will change, ownership might change, and this goes with that ownership, and it will sell if the property sells. And then they may want to develop into something completely different. So I tend to agree with John that I think a special use would be protectionism for that area. And it's a great frontage. There's no question for trailer, cars, automobiles. If they had a dealership special use, that would make sense. But I am concerned there's just a lot of usability or a lot of breadth to this category, and it leaves us kind of wide open.
Okay, thank you, Lynn, appreciate it. John, we also saw you raise your hand, and so go ahead, and then Mike, I'll get to you as soon as John's done. John, unmute yourself.
Unmute.
I did that.
Oh. So, yeah, I agree with what Lynn said. She put it very well, and I'm totally in support of what they want to do. I think it's a great fit. What's there and expanding it reasonably is just fine. But I'm not sure this is the right tool to get there.
Okay, thank you, Mike. John. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, Commissioner Ingalls, I just had a quick question, and this is in regards to, of course, the list that I think you're referring to. I just want to make sure I am looking at the same thing that you're referencing, and that's on page 15 of the staff report, where it shows under the C17 district is intended as a broad spectrum commercial district and so on, and then it gives the list of permitted uses such as follows. And that is what you were referencing when you made your comments earlier, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I want to make sure I was looking at the same set of criteria. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Mike. Brianna, go ahead.
Sorry, it was just a question. I think surrounding areas that are also, there's the risk, what would be allowed in those also. What maybe for Commissioner Ingalls or staff would be more appropriate tools? I think I see the area as being relatively compatible except for the R12 to the east. So that whole kind of long block runs risks of, I think you've described that can happen in a C7.
Okay, I have Lou up next. His hand is raised, but I don't know, John, if you want to address anything that you've just heard. Commissioner Ingalls.
No, I think I've said it a couple of times, but I'm very comfortable with what's there with the dealership and an expansion of that. And if there was more of that and it was of a use of selling cars out of there, that's a kind of function that to me doesn't bother the neighborhood that much. It's kind of quiet, it's kind of an 8 to 5 kind of an activity and whatnot. And they could get there with a special use permit. But if we change it to C17, it just opens the door for any possible commercial use down the road that may not be compatible to the residential property to the east.
Thanks, John. Go ahead, Lou.
I'm just going to point out that from Kathleen to, I believe it's Dalton, it's pretty much Automobile Row. North of the Nissan dealership is the Subaru dealership. North of the Subaru dealership is the Ford dealership. North of the Ford dealership is I believe it's a Hyundai or Kia. I think it's a Kia, George Gee's dealership. So I'm very comfortable with the idea that that particular area and region has really become dedicated to automobile sales and service. Now, I don't see that there's going to be an alternative use for this property. I think, there are other C17 zones. It's not like this particular property would be unusual if we were to approve the C17 zone, as most of the adjoining, if not all the adjoining property other than residential is zone C17. So I'm pretty comfortable with the idea that this is going to be an automobile use, whether it's owned by this particular group or another group, and it's got frontage on 95. And my sense is that there's a clustering effect. So it's going to be some form of automobile sales and service. And I actually, I don't see the need to require the special use permit. I'm comfortable with the C17.
Thank you, Lou. Appreciate that. I'm just looking at the overview map of the streets that connect to this particular property compared to how the rest of the dealerships that Commissioner Rumpler mentioned. And Mike, you can weigh in on this if I'm not correct, but the only entrance to the property, and I believe it's Crown Avenue off of Government Way, and then also, I guess, on Kathleen. Is that the only entrance to this property, different than how the other car dealerships have access to their property off of Dalton and or any other street.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Barry, do you happen to have your map easily available or on the power street maybe?
Yes, I could pull that up and share it.
That might be helpful just to kind of show context.
So,
That map right there.
yeah, and I'm assuming you heard my question, so I didn't know what other access points to that particular property that we're talking about tonight, other than it looks like it goes around that neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah, there's an access point here and to the south.
Okay,
And for other car dealerships, they have to access here and they still come in through here to get to them.
all right,
There's really not direct access off of 95. They have to come in and come around to get to the dealerships.
correct. Okay, I just wanted to kind of point that out. Thank you, Mike, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
John, go ahead.
I just want to reiterate, I'm not fundamentally against this. You know, I just thought maybe there's a different and better way to get there. You know, this probably becomes a car dealership. As Lewis says, you know, it's dealership row along there. I think it's a good fit that way. I just wondered whether there might be a little bit better way of a different tool to get there that doesn't open the door that somewhere down the line we end up with a massive, criminal justice facility there, or something goofball or whatnot. Probably never going to happen. Probably becomes a car dealership, and I'm totally good with that. And I'm not Drew Dittman. I'm not trying to throw a stick in your spokes at all. I think this is fine. I think I can vote for it. I just kind of wanted to kick around and debate a little bit whether there might be a different way of getting there is all.
I appreciate it, John. And my comment is, yeah, John, I kind of agree a little bit what you're saying there. We're opening it up to anything. And of course, at that point, whatever that anything might be, might add a lot of traffic, as we have with any project. But again, I guess we'll just have to see where this goes. So if we have no further discussion from the commissioners on this, I'll ask for a motion from one of our commissioners.
I'd be glad to make a motion.
Thank you, Luke. Go right ahead.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this matter having come before the Planning Commission on April 14th, 2020, and there being present a person requesting approval of ZC-1-20 request for a zone change from C17L to C17 zoning district. The applicant is Lake City Engineering on behalf of Zanetti Brothers, Inc. Location is plus or minus 6.2 acre portion of a parcel located at 4301 North Crown Avenue. I would suggest adoption of the findings of B1 through B7 in support of the motion. B8, that this proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan policy as follows, and I would cite objective 1.12 community design, objective 1.14 efficiency, objective 2.01 business image and diversity, among others. That public facility utilities are available and adequate for the proposed use. This is based on the staff report. All services are available and can be delivered to the property and are being delivered to the property. B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do make it suitable for the request at this time. The topography is flat and there are no streams or wetlands present. B11, that the proposal would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and or existing land uses, because Kathleen can handle additional capacity, again, per the staff report. Conclusion, decision of the Planning Commission pursuant to the aforementioned finds that the request of Lake City Engineering on behalf of Zanetti Brothers, Inc. for zone change as described in the application should be approved. And there are no special conditions.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mandel, second.
I have a first, and I have a second. Can we have a roll call, Shannon?
Fleming,
Yes.
Ingalls,
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
Lutra,
Yes.
Wampler,
Yes.
Warren.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Item number ZC-1-20 is passed, and we got through our first Zoom public hearing. Not bad. Thank you very much. Okay, our second hearing this evening is the applicant is Dave Schranz. Sorry if I did not pronounce your name right, with ETD Enterprises LLC. Location is lots 1 and 2, block 1 of Bunker Park. A proposed commercial recreation sales special use permit in a light manufacturing zone district, SP-3-20. And Tammy Shroud from the city, our associate planner, and Jack Pluggerman. Also, Jake, I'm sorry. From a planning Department of Planning technician will do the presentation on it. So Tammy, go ahead and start us off.
Thank you, Planning Commissioners. This evening, as Tom said, Jake and I will be sharing this presentation this evening for requested special use permit. So midway, I'm going to hand it off to Jake so he can share a few slides. So the item this evening is a special use permit in the light manufacturing zoning district for commercial and service activities. The applicant is Dave Schranz, and the location is lot 1 and 2, block 1, Bunker Park, which was formerly Commerce Park of Coeur d'Alene, lot 3, block 4. So the request this evening is for special use permits for the following 3 commercial and 3 service uses on 2 separate parcels. For the commercial activities, business supply retail sales, food and beverage stores on and off site, and specialty retail sales. And as far as service activities, commercial recreation, personal service establishments, and professional and administrative offices. So this is a site location map, and this is the outline of the subject property. Kathleen Avenue is located here, and this is Schreiber Way. And this evening, we will go through the 3 required findings for the requested special use permit. Finding B8A, that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. This is where the subject property is, and this area is designated in the comprehensive plan as Ramsey Woodland, and it's also stable established. So it's described as areas where the character of the neighborhood has largely been established and in general should be maintained. The street network, the number of building lots, and general land use are not expected to change greatly within the planning period. And we've also included some comprehensive plan objectives, and additional comp plan policies and objectives are in your comp plan on pages 5 and 6. So objective 1.11, community design. Objective 1.12, again, community design. Objective 1.14, efficiency. Objective 2.01, business and image diversity. And objective 4.06, public participation. Finding B8B, the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on the adjacent properties. The area surrounding the request is relatively flat and yields different zoning districts from manufacturing, light manufacturing, and commercial limited, which is C17L. And across Kathleen, you'll also find R12 and mobile home. And there are a variety of activities and uses located within the Schreiber Way area. And I'm going to hand it over to Jake at this time, and he can discuss some approved special use permits in that area.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. I'm Jake Plagerman. I'm the planning technician for the City of Coeur d'Alene Planning Department. Can you guys hear me okay? Perfect. Okay. So the subject properties are outlined there in the black. You can see Kathleen Avenue to the north, and then Ramsey Road to the west, and Howard Street to the east. Shriver Way is in the middle, just for some context. The subject properties there they have approved special use permits abutting them: professional office, central service, and civic admin. What I wanted to point out too, there in the middle are the 6 approved uses you'll see. Those 5 parcels approved as SP 118 and SP 218 hold the 6 same uses that we're looking at in this item. But just for context sake, this exhibit provides some detail on all the approved special use permits up to this point. Up next, what we'll look at is the land use map. So the subject properties there outlined in red. You'll see that it's a white color that indicates a vacant use. There are some additional vacant parcels in the vicinity. The primary colors that you see here in this exhibit are the blue for civic use and the red for commercial. The gray, 2 parcels south of the subject properties is manufacturing. And then that yellow that you see down in the southeast corner is single family dwelling land use. The 2 additional are agriculture, which is the lime green. And then there's 1 duplex down to the southeast. Primarily what we're looking at are civic and commercial surrounding the subject properties. Up next, we'll take a look at the zoning map. So again, the subject properties outlined there in black. The light gray that you see is light manufacturing. That is the zoning of the subject properties. Adjacent in the northwest corner, the pink is C17L. It's a limited commercial zone. The darker gray to the south of the subject properties is the manufacturing zone. As well, we have the red zoning, which is C17 over to the east of Howard Street, excuse me. The orange is R17 down in the southwest corner. As well, we have R17 PUD and MH8 zoning. Now at this point, I'm going to pass the presentation back over to Tammy. She's going to discuss some site photos, and additional finding and staff comments and conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. So as far as site photos, this is a view northwest corner of the subject properties facing east. And this is, if you recognize the Coeur d'Alene Police Department here. And this is a site photo from the northwest corner of the subject properties facing south. As you can see, it's just flat. And this is a site photo on the east side of the subject properties along Shriver Way facing west. And this is another photo from the east side of the subject properties along Shriver, again facing west. And finding B8C, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. So city staff from engineering, streets, water, fire, parks, and wastewater departments have reviewed the application request in regard to the public utilities and facilities. And staff has indicated that there are adequate public services and facilities available. And additional comments are located in your staff reports, on pages 13 and 14. So I did provide the additional slide with specifics as far as traffic. So the ITE trip generation manual estimates the proposed project, estimated about 7,500 square feet, is expected to generate approximately 22 a.m. peak hour and 45 p.m. peak hour trips. This, along with the additional retail developments proposed at this location, will likely increase the peak hour congestion, but it's not easily quantifiable in the absence of not knowing the intended uses. The impact will slightly increase the delay along exiting Shriver Way onto Kathleen, and Streets and Engineering did not have an objection to the proposed special use permit at this time, and that was submitted by our city engineer, Chris Bosley. So this is the site plan that the applicant has submitted. And originally when the applicant came to visit with staff about a special use permit, they discussed just doing the swim facility, which is located here, and the footprint for the Safe Splash swim facility. Then they made a decision to go ahead and include both of the lots. and provide footprint for future uses, and then blanket them with the 6 options that Jake discussed for the land use and approved special use permits. That way, if they had a different tenant that wanted another use, they would be covered. This is a building rendering for the Safe Splash swim facility that they are proposing at this time. And this was the original lot, and then it was split in half to provide for the 2 lots that we are depicting in the site plan. And there are 12 total conditions for this requested special use permit, 2 from the planning department, 3 for the wastewater department, 1 with water, and 6 fire department requirements for conditions. And action alternatives, the Planning Commission will need to consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And that's the end of my presentations if you have any questions for us.
And Jake, especially Jake, first time I've seen him do a presentation, did a great job. Tammy, you're an old pro at this, so thank you very much. Do the commissioners have any questions of either one of, okay, we have Commissioner Garrett Mandel. I'm sorry, Mandel, go ahead.
Curious from the applicant, there are 12 conditions. From the applicant perspective, are those reasonable and achievable to meet?
Mr. Chairman, if we want to wait maybe till the applicant does his presentation to have that question out.
Okay.
Yeah, we can have, I'm sorry, a little hard hearing sometimes here, but yeah, we can have the applicant address that.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have any questions? Okay, if not, then I'll bring the applicant up, and I don't know if we have any other people signed up.
Not, just the
We
applicant.
only have the applicant signed up, so again, I'll give it over to Shannon.
Okay, do you want to raise your hand, please? Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Dave Sean, there we go. Okay.
All right, thank you, Dave, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dave, can you hear us okay?
I can, yes.
All right, great. Well, go ahead and give us a little bit of your presentation. Appreciate it.
Okay, you bet. So what we're proposing is, as Tammy had indicated, a use that is within the special use uses for this light manufacturing, specifically commercial recreation for the first portion of our project. Safe Splash is it's a franchise of swim lessons, and it also provides opportunity for triathletes to train year round, especially in our local weather climate. It allows people to train indoor year round. So that is the Safe Splash portion of it, 7,500 square feet. In addition, to make use of the property that we have, we felt it prudent to set aside some space at the front of the property for future retail development. That could be a coffee shop, that could be professional services. So within our special use permit request, we've identified that as business supply retail sales, food and beverage sales, specialty retail sales, as well as professional service establishments and professional and administrative offices. If we can share a screen real quick of our site plan. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So you can see we located the Safe Splash at the rear of the property with the intent of providing that retail space toward the front. More traffic will be in and out of the front retail space. It's a natural progression of more intense use back to the Safe Splash, which is more mom dropping kiddos off for a swim lesson. We've also indicated the potential for the future use on the opposite side of the property. It's a concept right now, but the intent again is future retail up on Schreiber Way with more office space type destination uses toward the back. Okay, I'm going to try to share a different screen now. And you've seen this as well, but this is the just some concept renderings of what the building, the Safe Splash building, will look like. Kind of a bird's eye view there, but again, 7,500 square feet, single floor. As you can see up in front here with these windows here, this is where the main pool will be. Obviously the main entry, office space, director's office for the use itself around the side there. Working our way around the back, and then finally kind of the view from what we'll call the employee parking and wrapping around the back here. And again, I think pretty straightforward. The uses on that entire Schreiber Way are very congruent with what we're proposing here. It's not out of the ordinary. Yeah, that'll be it.
Okay, appreciate it, Dave. Do we have some questions from any of our commissioners? Not seeing any.
Commissioner Engels is going to.
Oh, John does. Go ahead, John. Commissioner Engels.
Float a motion.
Go ahead, John. We just didn't quite get the beginning of your statement.
No, I chimed in a little bit too soon. I was going to jump in with a motion.
Okay, well, let's.
When you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Does it seem like we have any? Oh, wait a minute. Go ahead. We have a hand raised. Brianna, go ahead. Commissioner Mandel.
Yeah, just wondering if there were any issues with the proposed conditions.
Yeah, you bet. Sorry, I meant to address that. No, those conditions are well within what we had planned for the project. Obviously, fire access, water, landscaping, street frontage improvement were all what we had anticipated for the project. So we have no issues with those.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Other hand, I'm going to close public testimony on this particular item and bring it back to John if he's prepared to make a motion.
Sorry about that, Chairman. I thought I was a little ahead of myself. So
no problem.
So I'd like to float a motion in support of this and read through in the form of the finding worksheet, and this being a motion of a matter that's come before the Planning Commissioner tonight on April 14th, 2020, and there being present a person requesting approval of item SP3-20, request for a special use permit, multiple uses in a light manufacturing LM district, applicant being ETD Enterprises LLC on a site that's formerly Commerce Park of Coeur d'Alene, Lot 3, Block 4, replatted as Bunker Park, Lots 1 and 2, Block 1. Motion that we adopt the finding worksheet statements B1 through B7, and that we adopt a finding B8 that the proposal is in conformance of the comp plan as supported by the goal objectives presented in the presentation. I think with a particular emphasis on this being a community design project that fits well into the context of the Schreiber neighborhood with respect to community design and efficient use of existing infrastructure and utilities invested there. And in these troubled times, this would be a strong economic boost. And I pray to God that this project in this environment gets to go forward. That we adopt a finding B8B that we agree with the applicant that this is congruent with the and compatible with the development in the Schreiber neighborhood area, which is really a neighborhood of all kinds of uses of retail, manufacturing, office, civic uses, commercial, etc. And this would be a good fit with respect to that. And the appearance of the project with respect to scale and density would be quite compatible. Finding B8C, motion that the location size of the proposal is such that the development would be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities and services. And that was as presented by staff with respect to adequate capacity. Services are available, traffic is manageable. And with that in mind, that we would find pursuant to the aforementioned that ETD Enterprises LLC for the special use permit should be approved with the 12 findings that are laid out in our finding worksheet.
Thank you, John. I have a motion by Commissioner Ingles. Do I have a second?
I'll second Lynn Fleming.
That was Commissioner Fleming, second. Can we have a roll call, Shannon?
Fleming,
Yes.
Ingles? Ingles?
John?
I have muted everybody.
Ingles? Mandel?
Yes.
Lutrip?
Yes, and it might intersect, gives me great confidence to see John's notes on his paper. I missed that by not being there in person.
Rumser?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Ingles?
Hold on, let me unmute.
Hold on, we're gonna try to
Yes,
come back on audio.
Okay, Ingles?
yes,
Okay,
sorry.
no problem.
problem.
Thank you.
Rudy?
Great. Item SP-3-20 is approved. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, moving on to our next one. The applicant is Connie Kruger with Stone Hedge on behalf of Lakeside Real Estate Holdings. The location is west of Atlas Road, north of future exit on Hanley Avenue at North Downing Lane and west Site Way. It is a proposed PUD known as Enclave at the Trails. The first item is a PUD-1-20. Are we going to hear both of these at the same time?
We will.
Okay. And the next item on that applicant's application is a proposed 76 lot preliminary plat known as Enclave at the Trails. It's a S-2-20. And Tammy, you're going to do our presentation again. Thank you.
I am. Thank you, commissioners. So again, the applicant this evening is Lakeside Real Estate Holdings, LLC, and the representative is Connie Kruger with Stonehenge. So there are two decision points this evening. The first one is the request for the approval of a gated residential plan unit development. And the second decision point is a 76 lot, 10 tract preliminary plat known as the Enclave at the Trails, which is within the Trails 4th edition. So the location is 19.4 acres located west of Atlas Road and north of the future extension of Hanley Avenue. And it was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on March 28th, 2020. So I'm going to go through all the items that we have noted within this requested PUD as far as modification requests. So as far as front setbacks, the applicants have requested a 10-foot setback rather than a 20, a rear setback of 10 rather than 25, side yard setbacks 5 rather than the 5 and 10, which is required for lots without alley access, private gated vehicle access rather than the open access for the public, private streets rather than public streets, right-of-way width for type A, 44 feet rather than 55, right-of-way width for type B, which is 26 feet rather than 55, sidewalks on only one side of a street typical A, no sidewalks, curb, or gutter for street typical B, and then vehicles parked in overflow areas be allowed to back directly onto private streets. This is the location map of the subject property, and this is west homeward bound, and Downing runs through here, and then Carrington. And if this gives you an idea of where it's at, this is Hutter and our Prairie Trail. And then again, this is the aerial map, and Downing Lane and Carrington is located here, and then homeward bound. This is the site plan that the applicant has submitted, and I'll get into more detail about the open space, but it is gated here and here for the access, and this is the open space area within it, and they've got some connections for the residents to be able to get out onto the other trails. So I'll go through the findings listed here on the slides for the proposed PUD. So finding B8A, that this proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And this is the area where the subject property is located, and it's noted as transition in the comp plan, and that's noted in the green. So transition are areas where the character of the neighborhood is in transition and should be developed with care. The street network, the number of building lots, and general land use are expected to change greatly within the planning period. And Atlas Prairie District tomorrow is described as generally the area is envisioned to be a residential area, lower in density, that develops with interconnected neighborhoods, providing a mix of housing choices. And I have also included comprehensive plan objectives in your staff report if you'd like to see some additional ones. So objective 1.11 for community design, and again, objective 1.12 community design. Connectivity, objective 1.16, and objective 3.01 for managed growth. And finding B8B, the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on the adjacent properties. So I'm going to go through a few site photos, and this is the view from Homeward Bound Boulevard looking south toward Hanley Avenue. And this is the view from Downing Lane and West Homeward Bound Boulevard looking north toward the existing landings development. And this is a view from West Homeward Bound looking northwest toward the landings development again, and Hutter Road is over in this direction. And this is a view from North Downing Lane looking southeast toward Hutter Road, and they've got some of the infrastructure in. And this is the view from West Homeward Bound Boulevard looking west toward the proposed development. So as far as zoning, the zoning surrounding this area is R8, or excuse me, R12. And land use, as you can see in the yellow, it indicates single family, which is surrounding the subject property. And this color here notes that it is currently vacant. Finding B8C, that the proposal is or is not compatible with the natural features of the site and adjoining properties. So the subject property is relatively flat with Homeward Bound Boulevard to the north and Carrington Lane to the east. And the natural features of the site are consistent with the natural features of the surrounding properties, including the residential subdivision, which is the landings at Waterford to the north, and the development to the east, which is Hawks Nest. And the applicant has submitted a building elevation giving some examples of the character of the homes that will be built. Finding B8D that the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by the existing public facilities and services. The city staff from engineering, streets, water, fire, parks, and wastewater departments have reviewed the application request in regards to the public utilities and facilities. And city staff did indicate there are adequate public services and facilities that will be available for this proposal. And additional comments are in your staff report, pages 17 through 20. Finding B8E that the proposal does or does not provide adequate private common open space as determined by the commission, no less than 10% of the gross land free of buildings, streets, driveways, or parking areas. The common open space shall be accessible for all users of the development and usable for open space and recreational purposes. So the applicant has proposed 17.7% open space that can be accessed by the residents of the proposed development. And they've indicated that the open space will contain large park area with walking paths, landscaping, and a variety of use amenities, including sidewalk connections to the Prairie Trail, adjacent subdivision path system on Downing Lane, and an overflow parking area, group mailbox locations, and vehicle and pedestrian gate systems. And I've also included in your staff report more detail in the site plan legend located on page 15 of the staff report with some of the amenities in the open space area. And here again is the site plan which shows the open space and all the items that will be included. I'll name off a few, which is the active recreation lawn area, pickleball court, bocce ball, shuffleboard. They may have some community seating, community garden with raised planter beds. And the applicant can get into more detail about that and the connectivity to the other trails. Finding B8F, off-street parking does or does not provide parking sufficient for the users of the development. And the applicant did not request to make any changes to the required off-street parking requirements through this PUD process. Single-family homes would be required to provide 2 off-street spaces per unit, which is consistent with the code requirements for single-family residential. The applicant is proposing to provide 3 garage spaces per unit and 3 exterior spaces per unit on each lot. And in addition, they're also proposing a variety of parking areas throughout the PUD near the open space that provides 22 additional off-street spaces. Finding B8G, that the proposal does or does not provide for acceptable method of perpetual maintenance of all the common property. And this is coming from the applicant's narrative that the owner is proposing the following infrastructure be maintained by the homeowner association. And that includes the stormwater system, the streets, street surface, curbs, gutters, sidewalks, crosswalk markings, signage, and gates, the paths, the sidewalks for internal recreation and external connections, structures within the common areas, auxiliary parking area, snow removal and storage, irrigation, and then the mailbox area. And now I'll move on to the subdivision findings for S220. So these are the findings that I'll be covering for this request. Finding B7A, that all of the general preliminary plat requirements have or have not been met and attested to by the city engineer. And Chris Bosley reviewed the preliminary plat and said it does contain all of the general preliminary plat elements required by city code. And deviations from the required subdivision standards have been requested through the PUD process and have been noted in the PUD portion of the staff report. So this is the proposed subdivision or the preliminary plat that the applicant has submitted. Finding B7B, that the provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, right-of-way easements, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian, and bicycle facilities and utilities are or are not adequate. And again, city staff has indicated that there are adequate public services and facilities available and they're noted in detail on your staff report on pages 17 through 20. So this is a typical street section for the proposed PUD and subdivision. So section A serving front-loaded lots with parking, landscaping, and sidewalk on one side only. And this is typical street section B, which will serve the rear-loaded lots with no parking lanes, no sidewalks or curbs. So it would be a proposal with sidewalks on one side of the street only. Finding B7C, that the proposed preliminary plat does or does not comply with all of the subdivision design standards contained in chapter 16.15 and all of the subdivision improvement standards contained in chapter 16.40 requirements. So per engineering review, for the purposes of the preliminary plat, both subdivision design standards, chapter 16.5, and improvement standards, chapter 16.40, have been vetted for compliance because the proposed streets are private. Adherence to the city standards for width are not required. So the Planning Commission, as a condition of approval, established reasonable requirements to mitigate any impacts would adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood. So there are 18 recommended conditions for this requested PUD and subdivision, and the applicant is aware of those proposed conditions and does not have any issues with those proposed conditions. So there are 3 from planning, 1 from water, and it looks like 3 from wastewater, 5 from wastewater, and then fire department conditions with a total of 18. The Planning Commission will need to consider this request and make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. So any questions for me?
Thank you, Tammy. John, you have your hand up. Go right ahead, Mr. Commissioner Ingalls.
Thank you, Chairman. Great report as usual, Tammy. Thank you for that. Question for you, 2-part question. So the applicant has asked for a number of modifications or deviations, or however you would call that, with regard to setback, excuse me, setbacks and street widths, and the gate and private streets and all that sort of thing. So with respect to the deviations, we have approved a number of other projects in the last year or 2 or 3. Garden Grove, Sunshine Meadows, Riviera, Circuit at Celtis, Park Rose, projects like that. In your mind, are these deviations pretty commensurate with those?
Yes, they seem to be pretty consistent with some of the other PUDs that we've had recently.
Second part of that question is, as you get feedback in the planning shop, after we build all of these Sunshine Meadows and Garden Groves and whatnot, with the deviations, do you folks get feedback with respect to how they're performing with these deviations? And would any of these deviations give you pause?
We have gotten feedback over the years, and one of the issues that kept coming up was snow storage. And we have dealt with that. Fire department usually likes to see a plan that shows where the snow storage will be located. And early on in our meetings with the applicants, we asked for that detail. And I believe that it is one of the conditions that the fire department will require to make sure that is dealt with.
Okay, that's good for me. I have one last quick question. Homeward Bound is the street, correct?
That's correct.
And that's a song by who? Can you tell me whose song?
Spot? I don't know.
Simon and Garfunkel. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have Commissioner Rumpler had his hand raised. Go ahead.
My question was just like John's. It was just to see whether the deviations from these existing standards were compatible with other deviations that were utilized in the other PODs in the surrounding neighborhoods, and if they are compatible, or commensurate or not substantially different, I was fine with it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Brennan and
thank you, Lou. I know I have Commissioner Mandel raise a hand, but there was a person before that. Who was that, Hillary?
I think he lowered it, but then we have.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Mandel, go right ahead with your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to register for the record that I had the same questions regarding the deviations and the request for modifications as the other commissioners, and they've been addressed. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fleming, you have a question?
I have, they show the type A plan and with the rear load with the 3 garage spaces, and that takes the whole width of this home. My question is, we don't have their type B, which is on the perimeter of this property, and dedicating 3 garage spaces in a fairly narrow house makes it almost impossible. So I don't know why they omitted the type Bs, but it's hard to tell when you're saying that you're going to put in 3 garages, but you've got a full front load series of houses on all the perimeter. So I'd really like to see what they think they're going to pull off to try to get that 3 garage spaces.
Well, I spoke with the applicant briefly before we started our meeting just to get clarification, and they are allowing the 3 car parks for an option. If someone wanted to do 2, they could also do that. So you'll have to ask for more clarification from the applicant.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Lynn. Commissioner Luthrop, you had your hand up. Go right ahead, Peter. Peter, are you there?
Right, the residents to the right,
We can hear you.
east and north, the setbacks and so forth are similar there as they are in the applicant here.
Actually, the setbacks in the landings development would be our standard setback, 5 on one side and 10 on the other. And that would also be consistent with Hawk's Nest, 5 on one side and 10 on the other, because these are just standard subdivisions.
And secondly, then do these communities have private roads?
These are private streets. Yes, that's correct.
All the streets are private?
Within this development, within the landings and within Hawk's Nest, they're not private. There may be a very small section in the landings, I believe, very, very small, that they've got a PUD.
I'm not familiar with that area by the names of Hawk Nest and so forth. I'm looking just at the map here that's in the packet.
All right, let me get to that on my slide.
There. Right there. So there's lots of streets there and the houses, and are those private streets?
Within this development, these are not private streets. These are public streets.
Okay.
These are public streets, and I believe this area here, as I mentioned, it's a very small PUD. I can't remember, it was done quite some time ago, but that's private streets.
And what about the area right to the bottom there? Are those private streets there? No, up across the road?
Yes, there are.
No, other way, north.
This area?
Is that private streets?
Nope, these are public streets.
Okay, so they're public streets. Are any of them gated?
Not that I'm aware of in this area.
Okay, so then this PUD will be a little variance with the surrounding area. It'll be gated with private streets.
That's correct. But on the east side of Atlas Road, we've got a few of those gated areas within Coeur d'Alene Place or Sorbonne and some of the other smaller gated communities. So we've got little pockets of them in different areas.
And then you showed a picture what the structures might look like. Is that a part of the PUD? Will those buildings be of that style? Is that required in the PUD?
The PUD does require that they submit some architectural renderings just to give the character of what the development would look like.
The reason I bring that up is a couple meetings ago, we had a modification to PUD that we initially had pretty specific house types in that PUD, and they wanted to change it. And we did approve the change. And I thought at that discussion, I got the feeling that maybe we were thinking that we don't want to be that specific in future PUDs.
No, we did have that discussion during that meeting, and I believe Hillary pointed out that if that was something that the Planning Commission didn't feel was something they really wanted to weigh in on, we may need to make a modification to the PUD requirements, because the current code requires the applicant submit some sort of architectural design just to give a flavor of what that's going to look like.
Fine. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Tammy, a comment on my end. With all those homes around that area over the years, yeah, I would assume most of those were a PUD, and most of those, if they were PUDs, asked for consideration of setbacks and street widths and things of that nature. Would that be a true statement over the years that it took to have all those homes?
I apologize. I didn't quite hear everything you had to say, Tom. This was just a straight subdivision other than this little pocket here. Otherwise, they're all just standard subdivisions.
Without any request for variation from what our standard codes need? Or
No modifications.
Okay. All right. Any other questions of Tammy? Go ahead, Mike. Ward, Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, thank you very much, Commissioner. Tammy, I'm relatively familiar with that entire area, and as the various subdivisions came online and got developed, and I believe that section that you might be referring to up in the north part of, yeah, exactly. Those are those apartment complexes that I believe were added in at one time, kind of in the middle of mostly residential. That's in the, well, I can't even think of the name of the subdivision nonetheless, but it's Hawks Nest is down to the right and the bottom to the right, and then the rest of the area. Now, I do have a quick question. This is school district line is Carrington. Coeur d'Alene is on the east side of Carrington, and Post Falls is on the west side of Carrington. Is that still the case that you're aware of?
You know, I don't have that background information on that, and I don't believe we got any additional information from the school district.
Okay, I'll save that question for the applicant then, if
Thank you.
it's quite all right. But I do have another quick question then. Looking at this PUD, and again, knowing the area, that section is more or less going to be at the end of the roads that can approach in either through Johns Hawk or perhaps homeward bound, I guess.
Yes,
because
will be pushed through.
Canfield will be pushed through?
Hanley.
Oh, Hanley will. What is the alignment of Hanley roughly? If you were to.
I think we need to ask the applicant that. I don't have that information.
Okay. Okay. So I know the trail is what bounds the 45-degree angle to the south and to the west part, the straight line. That's the Centennial Trail there, or the
Prairie Trail.
Prairie Trail. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I don't see any other hands raised before I bring it over to the applicant to come up.
We actually have more people signed up, Mr. Chairman. So we have Connie Kruger as the applicant, we have Gabe Gallagher, and we have Keith Wells and Barbara Yeager. So we need to swear them all in together.
All righty. So if the applicant and the two participants that Hillary mentioned, please Shannon, you should swear you in.
You can find your little hand raise button on your Zoom. That would be great. It's under participants. If you can open the participants and then raise your little hands.
We have Connie Kruger, the applicant.
Okay. There were a few other people. Is M. Wells the same as Keith Wells on the list? Okay. Maybe you have to give them audio.
Okay.
Hillary, looks like Barbara has her hand raised as an attendee on the right side of the participant list.
Yes.
And Wells just did too.
And Wells did as well. Yeah.
Great.
All right, great.
Thank you.
All right,
Okay.
Shannon, go right ahead.
Wonderful. Okay. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Great. Okay.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Go ahead, Connie, and let us hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and we have a short PowerPoint presentation for you, and we'll share our screen and go through that and then address some of the items that have been brought up. So as has been mentioned, my name is Connie Coeur, and I am the planner who's been working on the project, and Gabe Gallinger is the civil engineer who's working on the project and is next to me here. We thought it might be helpful to understand a little bit about the company that is coming forward with a proposal. And part of the reason for that is because PUDs can be considered, you know, a little innovative, and you're putting different infrastructure in the hands of homeowners associations. And so we thought it was important for you to understand a little bit more about the owner of the project. And so who we have here is our applicant and property owners, Lakeside Real Estate Holdings, who the application has come in under. But also under the same ownership is the developer, who is Coeur Development, and the builder, who is Architectura Homes. So those three combined are working on a number of different projects in the area. And so right now, about 100 homes are being built and released onto the market every year. And we're growing presence in the area. So as part of that, there are plans to grow and diversify the stock that is being offered by the companies. Something to be aware of is that we have a presence in Washington and in Idaho, and have been involved with a variety of different developments. Right now, there are a number of different homeowners associations that are involved. And so with that, we contract with a group their name is the Association is Incorporated, so ASI. They manage various homeowners associations. So with this project, we've already met with ASI to discuss managing this development and being a pretty active member of that homeowners association. We'll be managing a variety of infrastructure. Our proposal here is has been mentioned already. Excuse me, just one second. I've got video over here where my text is. This is really a redesign of the Trails 4th edition. And it's just important to note that the Trails overall is an approved subdivision with 470 units and is being constructed in phases. And so when you look at the project that we're looking at for the enclave, this is land that was actually originally planned and approved as part of the 4th edition. And there were 2 sub-phases with that. And you can take a look at the graphic that we have here, and you can actually see there are the underlying phases 5 and phases 6, and see where the lot lines are and how our new lot lines lay over that. And then also where there were lots in the center, how that has been expanded out to incorporate additional open space. So our original approval and what we're proposing now are very similar. But what we're trying to do is to work to diversify the housing stock that's being offered. And so with that came this idea of taking a portion of this much larger development that has already been approved and just customizing a little bit and not asking for higher density, not asking for smaller lot sizes than are required by the code. Everything that we're requesting fits with the code, but more in the actual design of the lots and requesting some deviation so that we can have this alley loaded product, so that we can interface better with the green space that we're creating and also with the surrounding trail systems. What this does for us is it opens this portion of the overall development to a little bit of a different type of buyer. And usually this is a buyer who wants lower maintenance lots. this is proving out to be quite appealing to folks that are nearing retirement, that their children have left the nest, and also to the younger buyer. So we're seeing that trend happening with both of these groups. And we've seen with Lakeside, they've actually studied this quite a bit. They've hired economic analysts and they've looked at it, and they know that this is a demographic that is important to serve here in the Coeur d'Alene area. So one other item that this does, we've talked a little bit about, the rooftops around it and how does this fit. And again, we're showing you how it fits with the original proposal, but also that this is something that adds just a little bit more interest and marketability to the holdings that we have in general, and also to the trails development. So when you move into the trails development, knowing that there are these different pockets and different neighborhoods is actually appealing to the buyers. So just to hit again on our design, you saw the last, which was the original plat that was approved, and how we've opened up this area here that used to have the lots to some of the open space, and we brought through these trails and just trying to create this, more livable area within the development. This is a aerial photo showing you the trails, and so this gives you a little bit of an idea that the trails has a lot of green space. We're going to be connecting with our development along Downing with similar green space buffers and large, wide, walkable, bikeable trail systems. But again, when you move internal to the development, kind of tightening things up and then creating additional pockets of green space. Some PUDs that we think are somewhat similar to what we're looking at with the enclave are Coles Loop in Post Falls. And in this case, they do have 50-foot road right-of-ways, but the surface width is 29 feet. So similar to what we're looking at on our outer fringe lots. Theirs are also incorporated into private road tracks, similar to ours. And in this case, there are actually no sidewalks in Coles Loop. Now, as you move out into the Highlands, there are sidewalks, but they have sidewalks on one side only, which again is very similar to our outer loop. The open space tracks in this particular PUD are within the Highlands Golf Course, and this Coles Loop development is actually a gated subdivision. So again, very similar. We talked a little bit earlier, Tammy brought up one of the little infill developments that was also a gated PUD, which is on the east side of Atlas, and that's Coeur d'Alene Place 23rd edition. And you can see here the plat of the 23rd edition, and you can see over here, these are the tracks where we have, basically the roads that have been put in tracks that are owned by the homeowners association. And in this case, they have a 30-foot wide right-of-way with a 25-foot wide surfaced road width. And so, again, very similar to what we're proposing on our alley road product. Again, this is a private road track. They have open space tracks over here and down in this area here. And in this case, there are no sidewalks. So you can see from this aerial photo here that these homes are actually set quite close to this internal road system. And I think I measured the setbacks and they're about 15 feet from the edge of the roadway. And this is also a gated PUD. So just some examples of where this is happening. We did attend our pre-application meeting with the city, and as part of that, as an applicant is really looking for that feedback, especially from your public works and your engineering departments on where the pinch points are with development. Usually they're going to be with snow removal, parking, things like that. And we addressed all of those, and we came in with a very detailed plan. And we did receive a lot of positive feedback that the development looked like something that would be approvable, and also there were no issues that were raised related to any of those types of items like snow storage or the parking. We've reviewed the standards of approval, and these have been laid out in depth in Tammy's presentation and also in the staff report. And we don't want to drill down into it just for sake of time tonight, but we do believe that we need standards of approval. And we also think that it is important to let you know that we've reviewed the conditions of approval 1 through 18, and that the owner's representative has agreed to those conditions of approval. A couple of the items that were brought up tonight, the items on design and setbacks, I'm going to actually have Gabe address. But I did want to hit a little bit on the architectural standards and school district. The architectural standards, again, this wasn't anything that was brought up that we needed to produce a high level of detail in what was submitted. So what we provided you is pretty much a schematic, trying to get you to understand what the face of the block might look like. But we haven't put a lot of detail thought into the architectural elements of what you see there. If you look at this photo on the left, this is showing some of Architerra's current product. And so this gives you a little bit of idea of the type and the style of what is currently being built that morphs all the time. And so, you know, we work with companies that help us to develop that as we move along. But we didn't see detail within the required submittal items or within the conditions of approval. But we did provide that to meet the submittal requirements. With the school district, I did have a discussion with the school district. They contacted me. They asked me about the price point on the lots. We talked similar to what I presented to you today about the intended market for the lots, and we're looking for that buyer who wants kind of a low maintenance environment and will be participating for payment of homeowners association fees and dues. And there was no concern expressed by the school district. I haven't seen a letter that has come in, but that was from our verbal discussion that we had about a week and a half ago. So with that, I'm going to have Gabe, who has put all the thought and time and work into actually designing this, to answer some of the questions that were brought up related to lot size and setbacks.
Good evening, commission members. Again, Gabe Gallinger, I'm the engineer for the project. I work for Core Development, which is, as Connie mentioned earlier, our development group within our in-house group of companies that range from landowners to developers to the home builders. And I did put a fair amount of time into this project and have a lot of thought and detail that I can express to you and answer your questions. I think brought up one of the questions was how can we have a 3-car garage on the perimeter lots of the development? The minimum lot frontage on the perimeter lots is 72 feet wide, and with the proposed 5-foot setbacks, side yard setbacks, that would allow a 62-foot wide structure. That currently would facilitate any of the homes in the Trails subdivision with a 3rd car option on them. The base plans often in the existing subdivision come with a 12-foot addition for a 3rd car, making them 62 feet wide. So we did look at that to make sure that those perimeter lots would accommodate a 3rd car garage. This is one of the things that we find is very sought after in this subdivision. And I think in the community, we have a lot of recreation in the area, and people have toys and extra cars and vehicles and, you know, summer stuff and winter stuff, and they need a place to store it. And 3rd car garages have been one of the things that we found to be very, very desirable. So we wanted to create this gated private community within the Trail subdivision to diversify our product and you know, allow those 3rd car garages. All of these lots in this proposed enclave will accommodate a 3rd car garage, including the alley loaded lots at 50 feet wide. 5 and 5 setbacks allows a 40-foot building structure. 36 foot is the typical width for a 3-car garage. So as a rear load, and then obviously those homes would face the either common areas or perimeter street. I think at this point, you know, I guess some of the setbacks that we've proposed to that are in deviation to the existing zoning code is the rear yard setbacks to 10 feet. This subdivision is proposed to be maintenance free to the homeowners. So what we were trying to accomplish is not really medium-sized yards in everyone's backyard, but reduce the size of those and create really, really nice, usable, common open space where people can go have more area than they would in their backyard, different amenities, trails, and things that they can really use. So we're trying to move that active use and outdoor use away from the homes and into the common areas. And that's why we've provided additional parking common areas. So people, if they want to go visit those, they don't have to walk to them, but they can drive over and park near and have access. We've also provided multiple trail connections in and through the common area and out to the private lots. And then even from this development onto Enclave Avenue, we'll have 3 actually access locations that will access the meandering trail in the common open space along Downing Avenue. And that connects to the Prairie Trail as well. And then obviously goes to larger trail systems throughout the city network. That covers kind of the thought behind the setback in the lots and the community in general.
Okay, Connie, Dave, is that everything you need to tell the commissioners at this time? Are you open for questions?
I think unless Connie has anything else, I think we're open for questions.
Okay, great. Of course, I'll open it to the commissioners that would like to ask any questions at this time, but I do have one. And Dave, the statement, in here saying, of course, the 3-car garage spaces per unit and 3 exterior spaces per unit on each lot. I understand the 76-foot width, I believe it was. Can you explain to me again, or was it just perimeter lots? Can you go back on that? Maybe I missed something. Or is it all in the subdivision or certain ones? And those 3 exterior spaces, are they on the lots themselves? How is that going to work out with the design of those homes?
Yeah, so the 3-car garages will provide 3 parking spots inside of the garage structure. And then between the base of the garage and the street or sidewalk, there will be a minimum 20-foot deep driveway approach, concrete driveway approach that is the width of the garage. So that would provide an additional 3 parking spaces off of the street, but between the garage and the street.
So basically, you're using the driveway as the 3 additional parking spaces per lot. Okay, just wanted to bring that up. Does any of the commissioners have any questions at this time for the applicant?
I do.
Who's that? I'm sorry.
Luttrop here. I thought I poked the button and said to raise my hand. Anyway, I'm Peter Luttrop, one of the commissioners. First, I have 2 questions. Well, first, it's fairly broad. In the city's publication of planned unit development, it says a planned unit development is a design and regulatory tool intended to facilitate the creation of better living environments. Can you explain what this better living environments your PUD is going to accomplish in better living environments?
Well, I think I touched on it a little bit. The common area is really what sets us apart from a standard subdivision, providing community space for gathering, activities, a lot of things that a traditional subdivision, and if you looked at the Hawk's Nest or the Landing subdivisions, the lots on general might be a little bit larger, but you don't get the large open space areas and parks this development is proposing. For people to come and enjoy and gather and have that larger space than what they can accommodate in their backyards. The traditional subdivision has a little backyard, and that's their own private little paradise. This subdivision is meant for the people that don't necessarily like that and don't want to own a lawnmower and have maintenance of their own backyard, have the HOA cover that for them, so when they're home they can go out and utilize this space and it's prepared and taken care of.
So it's providing a different, unique opportunity than what a standard subdivision would provide.
The next question I have is on connectivity. There's other neighborhoods around there. So now your neighborhood is going to be unique. It's going to be private roads and gated. How will the add connectivity to the area, or will it? I mean, you mentioned it earlier. You've got an enclave. An enclave is just sort of isolated there. The connectivity with the neighbors and the kids riding bicycles and so forth, doesn't your plan sort of diminish that connectivity?
Yeah, let me touch on that. So I'm going to scroll to this. So the enclave project is indicated in the shaded area within the existing trail subdivision. This is Downing Road, and it connects into the trail subdivision. And
is this the same project we're talking about?
Yes. Yes, this is the project. The shaded area is the project that we're talking about right now, enclave.
And this is the other property that has public roads and so forth, right?
Yes, this enclave is a portion of the existing trail subdivision. The trail subdivision is a 470 lot approved subdivision that is just south of the landings and west of Hawks Nest. So this is currently planned and approved to be a portion of that subdivision. We're looking at it and applying a PUD overlay to just the shaded area indicated. So it would be gated. Some of the conditions we have the Prairie Trail that bisects this subdivision currently. The Prairie Trail has limited vehicular access across it. And this subdivision was limited to 2 crossings, one at Carrington and one for this local access road. And you can see with the enclave, we have connected to Downing in 2 locations, which is very similar to what the underlying subdivision had proposed. And we have maintained this local access public street around the perimeter, crossing the Prairie Trail to access the southern portion of this development. So as far as a regional connectivity, we are maintaining the only additional connection point this subdivision has across the Prairie Trail. And then Downing Avenue bisects this project and goes up into the landing. So with the addition of these private roads, they are disconnected, as you mentioned, but I don't believe that they are, stopping or hindering any of the regional or even local traffic from getting around to other adjacent subdivisions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Any other questions of the applicant until that? Unless I'll bring it open to public.
Oh wait, got somebody. Mike Ward.
Oh, sorry, Mike. Commissioner Ward, go right ahead.
No, thank you. I just raised my hand. So, but I did want to kind of follow up on the question. I believe that Commissioner Fleming had asked earlier in regards to the parking or perhaps lack of parking, and that would be, I think that was addressed and answered by the applicant. And I'm just asking if you could just clarify that I understand correctly. The 3-car garage is in that section B of your narrative, correct? I mean, the section B is what you would consider as your backloaded property with 3-car garages.
Correct.
Address the concern about the narrower streets themselves.
So the narrower streets are exactly that, proposed for rear access to those homes. So the garage will be set back 20 feet from those narrower section B roads with a concrete apron from the front of the garage structure to that road. And the 3-car garages will provide the 3 interior spaces in the garage structure and then the exterior parking spaces adjacent to those narrower roads. So in all, you really have 6 parking spaces available if you keep your garage clean.
And I guess that's a second part of that same question. You did say that it would allow for a 62-foot wide with 5 feet setbacks on each side, a 62-foot wide structure, which would allow for the 3-car garage. Now, what happens if the homeowner chooses to just go with a 2-car garage? Will that 3-car apron still be retained, or will it line up to the 2-car configuration?
I would suspect that it would line up to the 2-car configuration, and the two off-street parking stalls are what the code currently requires in the RA zone. So
okay.
Under that condition, we would meet the underlying code requirements.
So in essence, if the 2-car option were selected by the homeowner as the home was being built, at a minimum, those 2-car with driveways would provide for those 2 off-street parking per unit. Okay.
One other item with regard to parking that we haven't probably addressed adequately yet is the perimeter road, which is the road that is gated at each access point, does provide 29 feet of asphalt and then rolled curb on both sides. That's the same street width as all of the public roads in the trail subdivision that's adjacent. And that street width does allow for parallel parking on both sides. And in this configuration, we'll have direct access to that perimeter street on the perimeter lots. But on the opposite side of the street, those rear loaded lots will just, the front of the home will be facing that street. So there will be no driveway conflicts on one side of that road, which will actually allow for quite a bit of additional parallel parking within that street corridor that hasn't been counted as our provided parking in the proposal.
Thank you. And then I do have one last question, and this is related to my question I asked earlier. Originally, so this was part of the PUD approved for the Trails subdivision. This configuration was not the configuration that was approved at the time. That's correct. Thank you. That's the right slide. But because now you're going with the tighter lots and smaller setbacks and such, what's the difference between the number of units and would that be phase 4? Is that correct? Of that particular original plan versus the phase 4 of what you're proposing tonight?
So our proposal currently has 76 lots, and the same underlying area under the trail subdivision has 71 lots. So it's
okay.
5 lots.
Okay. And the reason why I asked that is because, again, I know unless it's been changed over the years, Carrington is the dividing line for the Post Falls School District.
That
whereas
has been changed in recent years.
Oh, it has. So now it's all within the Coeur d'Alene School District.
Hutter is now the dividing line, which is the city's ACI boundary as well. So
okay, so it aligns with the city's
yeah.
perimeter. Okay, thank you. Because I was concerned that if we've had other PUDs requests come to us before, and in the process, although it seems to me like the number of lots and the impact in the area is going to be basically the same, I didn't know if Post Falls School District folks had a chance to at least be aware of the changes that you're providing us tonight. So it sounds like that was historical. Now it's Coeur d'Alene. So thank you.
Yeah, it'll all be Coeur d'Alene.
Okay,
and so
thanks.
Just for one more reference piece on the lot count, on the previous 3 phases of this project, we have actually reduced the number of lots that were originally proposed within those phases to provide more larger lots that would accommodate 3-car garages. So even with the addition of the 5 lots within the shaded area, we are still below the accumulation. If you went to the table and added up the lots in phase 1 through 4, we are still, or actually to go through 1 through 7, including this area, we'd be below that number, even with the addition of these 5. So I think we've actually reduced the total lot count by 7 in previous phases. And now this would propose to gain 5 of those back.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that question. I do appreciate that.
You bet.
Okay, thank you. If we have no other questions from the commissioners to the applicant, I'm going to bring it over to Hillary to introduce or get someone of the public to participate.
Okay, great. So we had 2 committee members that signed up. The one indicated they did not want to testify, so I was wrong about that. So Keith Wells signed up but did not want to testify. We do have Barbara Yeager signed up to testify. We will unmute you, Barbara, and you'll have 5 minutes to provide comments.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Sorry, I don't know how to change my video. I don't see it here quickly. So anyway, well, I am a resident in the trails, and I'm not necessarily for or against what they're proposing, but I do have a couple questions. One question is, you know, I read the paper every day. Of course, I wasn't looking for a proposed change, so I didn't see any notices in the paper, of course. And all I did see was a yellow sign that posted about maybe 5 days ago along the trail, a very small yellow sign that was about 2 feet by 2 feet. And the meeting time of this hearing was so small that I had to take a picture of it to blow it up to see when the meeting was. So I'm not sure what other notices were required, but that's all I got was a sign. And the only reason I saw the sign is because I walk my dogs every single day in that area where all that common space is going to be along the new road that would be to the east of the enclave. So that's one question. And then I have just 3 questions. The second question is, it's a little disappointing because we were sold the neighborhood, so to speak, being the original plat of the 470s, well, whatever that was, I don't know. And so, you know, it's a little bit of a shock. And I have several people who are watching on our private Facebook group who are also a little bit in shock. So it's a little sad because that's going to take common area away from us, you know, walking, sidewalks, etc. So that's a comment, you know, another item. And then the third item is, when are we going to get our park on Hanley? And is that a private park or is that a public park? Is it gated? Is it not? When is that going to come into play? Because right now all we have is the dirt field, which would be, I'd prefer the enclave to the dirt field because we get all the dirt bikers still. So let's see. I'm also a realtor. So, you know, I don't feel, just as a comment, that the enclave is something that would reduce our values necessarily. I sold a cottage in Coeur d'Alene Place to a client recently. It's not in a gated area, but she loves that type of living, so she doesn't have to do yard maintenance. So anyway, if you could maybe address those 3 items, the notices, the yellow sign, the little shock about losing some common area for us residents who expected this plan to be a certain way, and then the park on Hanley.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I can speak to the
Yes.
noticing. So thank you, Barbara. So we did all the required noticing. So we do mailing within 300 feet of the property. So if you're outside of that, you would not get a mailed copy of that. We do notice in the paper. And during the staff presentation, I don't know if you were able to log in time, but we had that on the slide when we did the notice in the newspaper. And then we do post the site. So we do that 1 week before. The newspaper is done 15 days in advance of the hearing. We post the site 1 week in advance. And so we did do that on the site, and you're right. I mean, we can only make it so large. So we appreciate that you were able to get out and take a picture of it to see when the hearing was taking place. I think the other 2 questions are best to be answered by the applicant.
Right. And Barbara, those other 2 questions, the applicant, after all the other participants speak, they can address any questions that come up at that time. So we'll hear back from the applicant, and they can hopefully address your questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That is all that we have, Mr. Chairman, signed up.
That's it? Okay. Well, we'll bring it back to Connie and Dave to address perhaps any other statements you would like to make and or address any of the questions that might have come up.
Okay, I will address the park question. So the 10-acre park that was referenced south of the Prairie Trail, between the Prairie Trail and Hanley, will be a public park owned by the city, and that park land is still currently owned by the subdivision landowner and is required to be transferred to the city once the trail subdivision proposes a phase or development south of the Prairie Trail. As you've seen from the exhibit, this enclave is north of the Prairie Trail, so we haven't got to that point yet. But it will be coming in the next few phases, I believe. And then once the land is transferred, the city will do the development of that park.
And this is Connie Kruger speaking to the being sold the neighborhood. This is a very large development, developed out over a number of phases, and it's not unusual to see different changes over time. And, you know, kind of understanding the market more and tailoring things as you move along. This is actually quite common with a larger subdivision. So it is too bad to hear that it is a bit of a shock to folks, but we are hoping that some of the information that we provided tonight shows you what was originally approved and how this is fairly close to that. Also showing that we're still maintaining, you know, those trail connections and other items that maybe wouldn't have even been there without the PUD and what we're proposing tonight. Can you guys hear me?
Can you still, oh, I'm back. Okay.
I see a lot of smiling over there, and so I'm wondering if everything's going okay.
We had a thing with, like, you know, spooling, like it was trying to come back to life.
A large screen went away.
The meeting was going to terminate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I'm used to being on camera all the time.
I know.
We're learning how to be, how to run this meeting and still be looked at all the time. So it's a little bit of a challenge seeing people on the screen, but we're doing great so far, and I appreciate everyone's help. Okay, if the commissioners, I don't see any other hands up. So if there are no other questions for the applicant, I'm going to close public testimony at this time on this item, which is just the which is the PUD, and bring it to the commissioners for discussion and a motion.
So we have the two items.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have another motion to be made after this one, but we have discussion on the PUD at this point. And or if you want to do the subdivision or the 76 lot preliminary lot plat as well, that's fine. So I'll bring it over to our commissioners to talk about. Okay.
Is that me? It's Lynn Fleming.
Hey, Lynn, go right ahead. Thank you.
Hey, I don't see any issues with this. My question will be, well, will we be able to build this out? But, you know, that'll come as time allows. I think it's a good end to the piece of the puzzle. There's a lot of uniformity out there, so it's nice to kind of change it up and appeal to a different public. And obviously the demand on the younger age and on the older age is there. And, you know, I think that they've done a nice product elsewhere, and I think this will probably be a good addition in a fairly repetitive neighborhood. So I think it actually might be a good thing to switch it up. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Fleming. Any other comments?
I agree with Commissioner Fleming.
Peter? Peter, you wish to make a comment? Just unmute yourself, please. No?
Is breaking up a little bit. I don't know what it is, my sound or me. So I apologize ahead of time if I'm repetitive and if my questions don't make a heck of a lot of sense, then please ask me to restate it. Now, having said that, I'm concerned about the connectivity. I'm concerned about the private roads. I'm concerned about the gates. It doesn't seem to fit in my opinion, with the area in there. You know, don't have private roads other places. You don't have gates other places. When you get a private road and gates, you have a little enclave, like it was mentioned, or a little island. And I wonder how that helps our neighborhoods, how that helps the city. So I'm having and you've heard me talk about, you know, gates and private roads in the past, and I continue to have that concern, and I hope that whichever group is looking at this, that this PUDs would fall into in our comprehensive plan study, if they would take into consideration private roads, gated communities, and so forth. Because I think I think we're going the wrong way. We're getting a series. We'll get a series of islands out in that area, which we've already had one that's come up that way that we approved a while back. But nevertheless, private roads and gated communities, I think, are not consistent, in my view, of connectivity and our comprehensive plan. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Peter. A comment on that I can make. Yeah, I know we've come up with gates, and it's kind of a mixed feeling on whether gates are good or not, and private roads and snow removals and stuff. And these are things we just have to, I guess, deal with one-on-one as they come about, until, like you say, Peter, we look at it as a whole city question. As far as connectivity, yes, this is an island based on the gates, but connectivity outside of the island, I believe, is there with the streets and, you know, the rest of the public getting around this island. So the island is contained within itself with the gates. Connectivity, my feel, is around the island, is there, will be developed later, and, you know, so connectivity that way is outside the island. And if the developer feels this is what they want to present to the public to sell, you know, good luck and great. It's up to us to decide whether or not this is going to go that way. So I look for any other comments. I see, John, you have Commissioner Ingalls, you have your hand up. Go right ahead.
Thanks, Chairman. You know, Commissioner Luther, I totally value and respect your comment. You know, the thing about comp plans, you know, they have a lot of great comments in them, things that we ought to promote, such as connectivity and so forth. But, you know, on the other hand, there'll be another statement in the comp plan, you know, that says that we ought to have housing types. You know, most planners see the value in having a variety of housing types. It's not one size fits all. And I think, as Commissioner Fleming says, you know, you get an area like the Landings and Hawks Nest. If you look at that whole west side of Atlas, it starts to get kind of monolithically boring and odd, you know, and the same can be said about the east side of Atlas, which is Coeur d'Alene Place. And if it was all just monolithically R8, you know, it just gets kind of monotonous, and, you know, you need some housing types. You know, these little gated enclaves are not for everyone. I would be more alarmed if they were larger and whatnot. But when they're little speckled areas within a larger framework, I think they oddly kind of work, you know. And speaking from personal example of living in one of these, in Park Rose, which is one of 3 or 4 within Coeur d'Alene Place, similar size, 60, 70 lot enclaves. You know, I think they kind of oddly work, and they provide housing choice, housing varieties, which I think is also, you know, kind of a most hard to argue with comp plan objective.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Any other comments? If not, I'll look for a motion on the findings.
I'd be glad to make a motion on the PUD.
Appreciate it, Commissioner Runkler. Thank you.
This matter having come before the Planning Commission on April 14th, 2020, and there being present a person requesting approval of PUD 1-20, a request for a planned unit development known as Enclave of the Trails PUD. The applicant is Stonehenge on behalf of Lakeside Real Estate Holdings LLC. The location is 19.4 acres located west of Atlas Road and north of the future extension of Hanley Avenue. Excuse me. In support of the affirmative motion, I would urge adoption of items B1 through B7. B8, pursuant to section 17.07.230 plan unit development review criteria, a plan unit development may be approved only if the proposal conforms to the following criteria to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. The proposal is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. This is based on the following policies, and I'll cite a few. Objective 1.09 parks, objective 1.11 community design, objective 1.12 community design as well, objective 1.13 open space, objective 1.1 efficiency, objective 2.02 economic and workforce development, objective 3.1 managed growth, amongst others. B8B, the design and planning of the site is compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. This is based on the staff report. It's very common in terms of density, compatible with other developments in the area. Although the architectural style might be different, it will certainly fit in. And the size of the building lots and so forth are very similar to adjoining areas. B8C, the proposal is compatible with natural features of the site and adjoining properties. In the case of property located within the hillside overlay zones, does not create soil erosion, sedimentation of lower slopes, slide damage, or flooding problems, prevents surface water degradation or severe cutting or scarring, reduces the risk of catastrophic wildfire on the wildland-urban interface, and complements the visual character and nature of the city. This is the base on the topography is flat. There is limited stream, and there are no streams and other wetlands that are noted. B8D, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. This is based on the staff report, pages 17 through 20. B8E, the proposal does provide adequate private common open space. Areas is determined by the commission, no less than 10% of gross land area, free of buildings, streets, driveways, or parking areas. The common open space shall be accessible to all users of the development and usable for open space and recreational purposes. This is based on the applicant's design and plan, which is proposing 17.7% open space, which is 7.7% greater than is required, and additional comments in the staff report on page 15. B8F, off-street parking does provide parking sufficient for users of the development. This is based on 3 garage parks and 3 external proposed off-street parking that has been identified in the staff report as well as the applicant's testimony. B8G, that the proposal does provide for an acceptable method for the perpetual maintenance of all common property. This is based on the applicant's narrative in description of the homeowner association transition. So the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that the request Stonehenge on behalf of Lakeside Real Estate Holdings LLC for approval of the plan unit of development as prescribed in the application should be approved. There are 18 special conditions. Is it required that I read them all, or can I just cite that there are 18 special conditions that have been agreed to?
You just like to adopt the 18 conditions.
I would urge adopt the 18 special conditions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rumpler. I'm looking for a second.
I will offer up a second. This is Commissioner Ward.
Second by Commissioner Ward. Can we have roll call, Shannon, please?
Fleming. Yes. Ingalls,
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
Lutrip,
No.
Rumpler,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. PUD-1-20 is approved, and now looking for a motion for the 76 lot plat S-2-20, please.
This is
I'll make a
Commissioner
motion.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brenda. Go ahead.
Lynn.
That's okay. You do it. I got a dry cough, so I'll end up coughing. Go.
Oh, okay. For this matter having come before the Planning Commission on April 14th, 2020, being present a person requesting approval of item S2-20, a request for a 76 lot and 10 tract preliminary plat enclave at the Trails. Applicant is Stonehenge on behalf of Lakeside Real Estate Holdings, LLC, location 19.2 acres located west of Atlas Road and north of the future extension of Hanley Avenue. Accepting as justification for the decision criteria, findings B1, B6 as presented, and B7 pursuant to section 16.10030A.1 preliminary plats. In order to approve a preliminary plat, the Planning Commission must make the following findings. 7A, all of the general preliminary plat requirements have been met as determined by the city engineer or designee. This is based on provisions for sidewalks, streets, alleys, rights of way, easement, street lighting, fire protection, planting, drainage, pedestrian and bicycle facilities and utilities are adequate. This is based on the proposed preliminary plat does comply with all of the subdivision design standards contained in chapter 16.15 and subdivision improvement standards contained in chapter 16.40 requirements. Based on B7D, the lots proposed in the preliminary plat do meet the requirements of the applicable district. The Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that the request for Stonehenge on behalf of Lakeside Real Estate Holdings, LLC for preliminary approval as described in the application should be approved. With the special conditions noted, 18 of them.
Thank you, Commissioner Mandel. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion. Lynn Fleming.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleming. Here, a roll call, Shannon, please.
Fleming,
Yes.
Ingalls,
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
Lutrip. Lutrip,
Yes.
Rumpler,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Okay, S-2-20 is approved. Thank you all. Thank you, Connor. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Moving right along, last public hearing is the applicant is NC Sears with Smart Link LLC on behalf of AT&T. Location is 215 West Anton. Request for a proposed wireless communication facility tower special use permit is SB-2-20. And Mike, you're back. Here's the presentation again.
All right. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing for item SP-2-20, application by AT&T requesting a special use permit to allow a wireless communication facility cell tower in the C17 zoning district on property that is located at 215 West Anton Avenue Legal notice was published in the Coeur d'Alene Press on March 28th, 2020, and all other required notifications have been made. Here's a location map outlining where the property is located, highlighted here in red. This is Anton Avenue. This is Government Way. Here's a close-up aerial photograph of the property. The cell tower is proposed to be located in this location. Here's a bird's eye view of the property looking west, indicating where the cell tower is to be located. And here's a bird's eye view looking east, again indicating where the cell tower is located. The applicant has submitted a site plan showing the cell tower location. Here's a close-up aerial photograph of the site plan, or the site plan close-up view of it. The cell tower will meet the setback requirements, and so are the mechanical equipment on the ground level. The applicant has submitted an elevation plan indicating what it's a monopole design, and the applicant is requesting a site obscuring fence in lieu of the landscaping. There are 3 findings that must be met in order for a special use permit to be approved, finding B8A through B8C. First one is finding B8A that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan indicates that this is in the US 95 corridor area, and it's in the area of transition, and transition areas are likely to change over the planning period. This slide represents 3 comprehensive plan objectives as it relates to this special use request. The full list is on page 11 and 12 of your staff report. Objective 1.14, efficiency, promote the efficient use of existing infrastructure, thereby reducing impacts to underdeveloped areas. Objective 2.01, business image and diversity, welcome and support a diverse mix of quality professional, trade, business, and service industries while protecting existing uses of these types from encroachment by incompatible land uses. And objective 3.05, neighborhoods, protect and preserve existing neighborhoods from incompatible land uses and developments. The applicant has also submitted an existing coverage area of the AT&T coverage before and after. This is before the proposed tower. This is after. Once again, this is before and after. Kind of shows you the area that they're proposing to be able to serve. Finding B8B, the design and planning of the site is or is not compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. Here's some site photos of the existing site. This is looking on Anton, looking into the entrance of the property. This is just at the property line looking north through the property. This is central on the property looking north. And this is looking northwest at the proposed tower location. Tower is proposed to be located in this area right here. And here's another close-up of that view looking due east. The applicant has submitted some renderings showing what the proposed tower will look like. This is view number 2. As you can see, it's on 2nd Street looking towards the monopole over this location. And here's the 2 renderings without the tower and with the tower. Here's view rendering number 2, which is view 3 looking north from Appleway towards the cell tower. And you can see that on the rendering image right here that it's located right there. And the next view is looking across 95 from the west, looking towards the monopole, looking due east, and you can see it's located right here. Here's a zoning map illustrating the zoning. The current site is zone C17 and all the surrounding properties are zone C17. And the proposed tower, again, is supposed to be located in this area right here. Special use permits in the past. In 95, in 2016, we had 3 special use permits for our R34 density increase that was all approved. And then in 03, we had an auto camp special use permit that was approved here. And then in 2017, we had a custom manufacturing special use permit that was approved at this location. Here's a surrounding land use map indicating the surrounding land uses. As you can see, it's industrial slash manufacturing in these 2 areas with commercial surrounding this part, and this part. And you got multifamily over here and to the south. The next finding is finding B8C, that the location, design, and size of the proposed proposal are such that the development will or will not be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. This application has been routed through to the city streets, engineering department, water, fire, parks, and water departments. Each has reviewed the application request in regards to public utilities and facilities. Each of the departments has indicated there are adequate public facilities and public utilities available to serve the proposed request. In addition to the 3 special use findings, there's a wireless facility finding, a special finding that has to determine the 12 factors for consideration in granting a special use permit for a cell tower have or have not been adequately met. The full list of the 12 factors are on page 19 through 21 of your staff report, and the applicant has made their response to each one of those 12 factors. There are 5 recommended conditions that are part of this special use request, and the recommended conditions are 1 from engineering, 3 from the fire department, 1 from the planning department, and action alternatives. The planning commission will need to consider this request to make appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Questions from the commissioners for Mike at this point?
I have one. Mike?
Yes.
Mike, is this the, this is the first cell tower that's come before us that since I've been on the commission, it is not south. It's, I thought we had ourselves in a position where we were requesting all cell towers be south.
That only in the C-17, it's not a requirement, so they're not required to do stealth in the C-17 zoning district.
They're not.
They're not.
Very good.
Thank you, Peter. Any other questions of Mike before I ask the applicant to come up? Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll ask Nancy Sears, the representative from AT&T, to come up. And do we have anyone?
So Nancy's not presenting tonight. We have the 2 applicant representatives. We have Sarah Springer and Sharon Gretsch are both representing the AT&T and SmartLink.
Okay.
So we'll need to swear them in.
Shannon, go right ahead again.
Raise your hands, and do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. I do.
Okay, thank you very much. Whoever would like to give us a presentation, please go right ahead.
Great. I will be doing that this evening. I have a presentation prepared, but I cannot seem to find a way to share my screen.
I think we have your, okay. I think you have authorization now.
Ah, there we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, we should actually.
There we go. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you very much for seeing us this evening. I'm here this evening with Sarah Springer from Bush Law Firm, who will chime in at some point. And I wanted to thank you again for doing a online meeting that makes us the whole social distancing thing very, very easy to deal with. So again, I'm going to go very quickly because Mike really did present our application pretty well. Again, we're at 215 West Anton Avenue. We've chosen that northwest corner specifically because it does minimize the visual impacts of this facility. It meets all the setback requirements, and it's easily accessed off of Anton Avenue, and it's surrounded by C-17. So we felt that was a really good location to put this facility at. Again, we're looking at a 30 by 30 fenced lease area. This lease area will be surrounded by a 6-foot chain link fence with privacy slats. All the associated ground equipment will be located within that fenced lease area, which is a walk-in cabinet that has all of our equipment, along with a diesel generator. The diesel generator will run for about 5 minutes once a month just for testing. Other than that, it is, as it says, just for emergency services, emergency backup power. Tower, 90-foot tall monopole is what is being proposed. Per code, it does need to have additional carriers, space for additional carriers to locate on it. And we've done that. We've have designed this, and it will be structurally designed for 2 additional carriers, including AT&T at the top, along with all the ancillary equipment. And again, everything will be matte foundation or matte and anti-glare. The search ring that we had, the objective for this whole thing was determined through a combined analysis, and our RF engineers issued a search ring for us to locate a new facility. This is a search ring that we had to look for, and the proposed site location, let's see if you can, is right here in that upper north, center north location. In order for this facility to work appropriately, it had to be located on elevated terrain, really near 95 and I-90 in order to provide the signal dominance that we need for commercial and the residential establishments in that area. What that will end up providing is the standard uninterrupted wireless service with fewer dropped calls, better data services, and of course, improved access to emergency 911 calls throughout the area. Mike had showed you this already. This is what we're looking at right now. The area in green is the area that's currently covered. Everything that's not green is the gap in the coverage area. Once the facility is constructed, you'll see that the facility, that whole area is pretty well covered, and we're getting our coverage needed from and handing off to the adjacent sites. We've already looked at these visual studies, so I am going to just continue through. Mike did a fantastic job. And the last piece I really wanted to talk about that really wasn't addressed is compliance. AT&T is required to comply with all federal, state, and local requirements, including all of these lovely things listed on this slide. The big one at this point is our next step for this would be, of course, to file for a building permit. So we're a bit a ways from actually having this going up in the air, but that would be the next step if it were approved here this evening. That really is all I wanted to talk about. Sarah, are you on? Did you have anything that you think we need to add to this?
I am here, and no, you and Mike did a great job. And I think the only other thing that I would just add for the purposes of the record only is just to recognize that this facility as a wireless facility is identified and recognized as an essential infrastructure under the state's current order to self-isolate and under as incorporated under the Department of Homeland Security's identification of essential critical infrastructure. So just wanted to make that note for the record. Other than that, nothing to add at this point until we get questions, if any.
Yep.
Thank you. Lynn, Commissioner Fleming, go right ahead.
Yes, I have a quick question. Since this is a leased piece of a portion of a land mass that's owned by somebody else, are you then going to build for them the Knox box and the access to this lot in an after-hours situation? I would think that would fall in your purview rather than the owners who you're leasing from.
Right. It does, and that's part of one of the conditions that were mentioned as a proposed condition, and we're amenable to that, along with all the engineering and fire conditions that were.
And is the owner, the lessee, aware of this?
AT&T is aware and will be the one that would provide those, would fulfill those conditions.
Yeah, but the landowner who actually has the fence that you're leasing from, the landowner, the actual person who holds the outside fence, are they aware that they'll have to have a Knox box on their property? Dog in the house.
Yeah, welcome to working from home. Sorry about that. The Knox box, I believe, would go on the AT&T equipment. I do not know if this particular property is fenced.
It's fenced. It's visibly fenced. You can see that in the photographs.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's gated as well. So that puts us, if they lock you out of your Knox box, then the Knox box might have to move up to the street level at Anton.
So
I'm just raising a flag.
Sure. And I will say that the property owners have seen our approved plans for this and have agreed to what we are proposing. But it is a good point, and I will make sure that we point that out to the property owner.
Commissioner Fleming, the property owner as well, so I don't know if we need to grant him the ability to speak to answer that, or if we feel like the question has been adequately answered. But he has also seen the staff report, is my understanding.
Okay.
I'm good.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleming.
He was, okay. Okay. So do you want to ask Commissioner Ingalls while we try and get ready?
Yeah, well, Mike had his hand up. Commissioner Ward, you had your hand up. You had a question?
I did, but the question was what Commissioner Fleming asked, and it was answered. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Mr. Ingalls, you have your hand up. Go right ahead, John.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the second cell phone tower in 2 months. Each meeting we have one, and I don't know that anybody on this commission is real fond of cell phone towers, but there's an argument that they're indeed a necessary infrastructure, and they're part of emergency readiness and things of that nature. And I did, even though there's about 30 pages in this packet that we have devoted to coverages and the technical justification for this tower, I wonder if you the applicant, in more simple terms, can tell me if you can't find a spot somewhere, be it not there, but somewhere in that vicinity for coverage, if we just kept turning it down and you couldn't find a spot somewhere in that area, in simple terms, what does that mean? Does my phone not work? Do I can't call 911? I mean, if we don't have this necessary evil, I guess, what happens? What if we don't approve this?
Sarah, do you want me to take this one?
Either or, I'm happy, or you can, or we can both.
How about I start and you can fill in?
Perfect.
So every cell site that we have is finite. So it can only handle so much volume and so much, so many different users. And so what we do typically before we ever propose a new cell site is to look at what's out there, make sure that we've upgraded that the surrounding cell sites in the area to the greatest extent possible, adding additional antennas, adding additional radio units. But at some point we just can't. We can't add any more. So we have to go into planning to look for the next available option that we have out there. So our next step, we've upgraded as much as we can. Our next step after that is to go out and see what we can find that's already there to locate on. So it has to be, it's locationally dependent, if you will, in that it has to be pretty well centered so that it can hand off to adjacent sites and still meet the coverage objective and help to offload the surrounding sites. So in brief, I guess to answer your question, Commissioner, is that eventually what would happen if we did not construct a new site was your service would deteriorate you would have trouble making phone calls because you wouldn't be able to access the cell tower or the cell site because every other user was on it. So it would just be overloaded. Same with data. You would have a data slowing, that really annoying little circle that goes around and around when you're on internet that doesn't really work. So that would be the gist of it. Eventually you wouldn't be able to make a phone call just because there were so many other people queued up to try to use that same location. Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Commissioner Rumpley, you have a question? Go ahead, Lou.
No, I just have a comment. I'll reserve it for commission comments or commission discussion.
Okay, great, thank you. I've got a question, either Shannon or Sarah can answer. I see we have a sketch of the cell tower, and it mentioned that, you know, you can have additional, I believe, 3 other, perhaps later on, providers. And I see on the sketch, there are 2 that say future co-locations. So would that answer kind of the question if, you know, we kind of say, hey, gee, we have enough to cell towers, or go to another place? Are there, perhaps you can tell us, are there other cell towers that there are additional spaces that you've seen, whether they're AT&T or other providers, that, you know, coverage would be able to be added by using existing cell towers? Because we are seeing quite a few of these come before us, as Commissioner Ingalls mentioned. And my other question is, the other ones that we've seen, you know, they look like trees. This one doesn't, and maybe I missed it somewhere along the line, but how come there isn't this design more or less like a tree? Or is it because of the antenna arrays that you have on here that have to be exposed just like they are with no coverage? You can address those questions, please.
I will try. I'm going to repeat back the questions just to make sure that I understood you correctly. Your first question was, are there other facilities out there that would be designed like this that could be co-located on? We call it co-location when we go on to another tower. And why is this designed as a monopole as opposed to looking like a stealth tower? Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. I love it when I get it right. So I will tackle the question about the design. In the C17 zone, it is not required that this tower be designed as a monopine.
All right.
So that is, we've come in with what is required by code with the additional co-locations, understanding that we came in at the minimum height necessary to meet our coverage objectives rather than asking for something much, much taller. The second portion of that is, yes, there are other facilities that are built in the area that can do co-locations. However, there are none in the service area that we are trying to co-locate at or locate our facility. The nearest one, I believe, is a half a mile or 3/4 mile away.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions from the commissioners to the applicant? Not seeing any hands raised. We don't have anyone signed up.
We don't have anyone else other than the 2.
Okay. Well, at that point, I'm going to close public testimony and bring it to the commissioners for discussion and hopefully a motion. Please. Oh, I'm sorry, Lou, did you have your hand up again? No. Oh, you did?
Yeah, this is where I was going to provide more comments. Perhaps I should recuse myself since I'm an AT&T customer that lives in the gap coverage area. I was supposed to be joking. Everybody didn't quite get that, but
can you hear me now?
Exactly. Well, so the fact that we've seen 2 cell tower issues in 2 months, this is kind of the world as we are living in it now. We're awfully fond of our phones. If we're awfully fond of our phones and the utility of that phone, there has to be a pole somewhere, and it becomes a line of sight problem. You know, as a 90-foot pole is probably a reasonable compromise, as I think one of the AT&T professionals was suggesting. It could have been a lot taller. You know, it's kind of an optimization challenge for them. You know, they have a region they're looking at to try and improve the coverage that they're trying to achieve. They clearly want to be at the top because, remember, radio, it is a line of sight. So if you're at the top, you're going to have much better reception than if you're at the lower levels on the pole. So they want to be at the top of the pole, of course. So I fully understand, what they're trying to achieve here, and I'm fully supportive of it. As I said, I'm an AT&T customer living in the Gap, and I don't understand in the modern age how I could be, living in close proximity to the city of Coeur d'Alene and have 2 bars. So that's kind of, I think that's what they're trying to address, and certainly it's not going to go away when 5G comes. There's going to be more tech and more competition for providing cell coverage. So, I understand the issues, and if we wanted to, require stealth towers, then we should just change the code for C17. That stealth towers in a C17 zone, but should be required to have stealth technology or stealth design. But as it is, it's not required. So I'm in support of this this proposal, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Lou. Appreciate it. Any other comments, or perhaps
I have a comment if I can get. I'm going to raise my hand.
Yeah, you did raise your hand. Go ahead, Peter.
I'd like a little discussion from amongst us about the stealthness of this. All the cell towers that I recall coming before us in the past have been stealth. It started with the one by Michael Dees. I must admit, I didn't realize that the C17 zone didn't require a stealth tower, but other zones do. I would like us to have a little discussion, make this a condition to have a stealth. I think the tower, the location, so forth, the material that you've given us has been very thorough, more thorough than last month. And this month, I support the tower. I just would support the stealthness of it as opposed to the monopole. But I'm just one, and I don't know how the rest of you feel. I guess we could feel on the vote, but I'd rather have a discussion.
Well, thank you, Peter. John, Commissioner Ingalls, go right ahead.
Commissioner Luthrop, you make a good point, but for fairness of the applicant, I don't know. I mean, if they're just coming in expecting to meet the city's requirements, the city code, how can we move the goalpost on them? I agree. It'd be cool to have a stealth pole everywhere, but if someone came before us with a subdivision and the staff says, oh, it meets every requirement in the city, and then we said, we'd rather have the street be 70 feet wide, do that. We can't, I don't think we can change a requirement. I agree with you, but I think based on, the preponderance of the commissioners, if we feel that way, I think we would ask staff to consider making an ordinance change and bringing it up the process chain to change the city code.
Well, I would support that. I would support that, John, if we could do that.
But I think in fairness to the applicant, I don't know that we can do much more than that.
No, well, I will, certainly support this condition upon staff bringing before us some recommendations, and then we follow those recommendations through the chain of command. And if the city agrees with it, fine. If they don't, that's fine too.
I think you're spot on there. I certainly agree with that.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to add a quick comment if I could, to follow up with the Commissioner Ingalls' comment.
Oh, Mike, go right ahead. Sorry.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, to follow up on Commissioner Engels' comments, I think as well as Commissioner Lutrup's comments, I mean, I can certainly appreciate the thought and the want to perhaps have that stealth approach on these types of pieces of equipment. But at the same time, I mean, if you were to apply that to a pole out there in the middle of the prairie where there are no trees, and then expect them to place a pole that looks like a tree, it would certainly look more out of place than if it were just left alone. So I think there needs to be at least a understanding that in certain situations, if it's more industrial nature in the location rather than residential and or in an area where there are forested areas where it might blend in better, I think that's just my comment. I mean, I can understand both Commissioner Engels and Lutrup's comments, but at the same time, I think we need to understand where it's actually being cited in this particular situation. I don't think that particular requirement would be necessary tonight, but I like where you're going with it, Commissioner Lutrup. I understand that, so I just want to share that.
I would, go ahead, Commissioner Fleming.
I would agree with all the comments that we should look at this going forward, but tonight, I think this tower located where it is, backing up to used cars, and I don't think it's a problem in this location specifically, but I do think we should have some latitude in the future should it make sense to have a monopine. So I think that I agree with these folks. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleming. Appreciate it, Lynn. Comment on that. Yeah, I agree. And Hillary's here and Sean's here, so they've heard what you guys are saying, and whether there can be something done down the road, that's, I'm sure, something that'll.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just speak to that. So we will need to, if the commission wants us to look at the code, it should be done separate from tonight's item. And then we'll need to run this through legal because there's all these other provisions of our wireless code and all the other federal mandates. And we understand what you're saying. We could look at it certainly, but don't condition the item tonight based on us looking at the code.
Okay, so thank you very much. So with that said, any further discussion or perhaps a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleming.
This matter having come before the Planning Commission on April 14th, 2020, and there being present a person requesting approval of item SP-2-20A, request for a special use permit to allow a wireless communication facility cell tower in the C17 zoning district. The applicant is SmartLink LLC on behalf of AT&T. The location, a plus or minus 1.02 acre parcel located at 215 West Anton Avenue, comprised of parcel C-4095-000-004-A and C-2080-001-003-B. Following items B1 through B7 standard boilerplate. B8 pursuant to section 17.09.220 special use permit criteria. A special use permit may be approved if the proposal conforms to all the following criteria to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. B8A, the proposal is in conformance with the comp plan for the purposes of efficiency, the economic environment, connectivity with the airwaves, business image and diversity, and capital improvements to our infrastructure for communications. B8B, the design and planning of the site is compatible with the location, setting, and existing uses on adjacent properties. It's being a flat site and fully industrialized all around it. And then for B8C, the location, design, and size of the proposal are such that the development will be adequately served by existing streets, public facilities, and services. This is based on input from the city through water, fire, all the participants. And then most importantly, factors considered in granting special use permits for these towers. 17.08.825.c is the applicant has indicated the following responses to each of the 12 factors and has responded on a list comprising everything from the height of the tower, surrounding topography, tree coverage or lack thereof, and ingress and egress. I do have a concern that the owner is made aware that he will have likely a fence and a Knox box before entering into the site of the tower itself, which will be also Knox boxed and fenced. And that the applicant will demonstrate that there are no other limiting factors that we know of. In conclusion, in the decision, the Planning Commission, pursuant to the aforementioned, finds that SmartLink LLC on behalf of AT&T should be approved for a special use permit, and that the following special conditions are outlined: 1 from our engineering department, 3 from the fire department, including the Knox system, and from planning, the agreement to reduce landscaping requirement as requested and limit to a fencing screening agent. That's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleming. Have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ingalls. Could we have a roll call, Shannon, please?
Fleming,
Yes.
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
Lutrip,
Yes.
Rumpler,
Yes.
Warren.
Yes.
Thank you. SP-2-20 is approved. And that concludes our public hearing portion of our meeting. And at this time, we can have commissioner comments if there are any comments. And Commissioner Ingalls has his hand raised.
I would like to, I have two things. One, I'd like to commend you, Chairman, for your trips to City Hall in pulling off these mock deals, and for staff, Hillary, Sean, Shanna, all of you, the technical folks behind you, to pull off this virtual meeting. I think it's gone amazingly well, and so kudos to all of you good folks. And the second thing, it would be a question for Commissioner Rumpler. I noticed your hair looks, remarkably fresh haircutted. I just wondered how you pulled that off.
It's all gel, John. It's all gel. Haven't had a haircut in months.
Keep it up, sir. Keep it up.
I would like to add to that as well. Thank you, John, for your comments. Yes, we had a few mock meetings here, and I do miss actually being with everyone like we normally do. It's a little different looking at a screen. I'm certainly not going to go home and watch any TV for tonight, I don't think, but I do have to compliment Hillary, Shannon, all the technical people, Sean, everyone that's made this possible, except for a few bloopers that I might have had. I also want to thank Commissioner Lutrip for his early participation. He made it so much fun to do one of the mock meetings. It brought great joy and tears to my eyes. We laughed so hard, but it was great. And I want to thank all the commissioners. You guys did a great job tonight. You followed all the instructions that were thrown at you, and also I'm sure all the participants are gone and everything else, but I'm so very proud of all you guys, and I really look forward to actually getting back and seeing you in person shortly when all this craziness goes away. And I'm so glad that everyone is healthy and good that I've seen tonight. So thank you, guys.
Well, sort of as they do in soccer and so forth, we'll give everybody a great big hand, because you guys you're all spot on. Very good.
Thank you, everyone. If no other comments, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I would
motion to unplug.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
you.
good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ethan, stop. Stop right there. Dude, stop.